Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Okay, today we are going to continue our new chapter, which is hypothesis testing. Okay, so before we go further into the hypothesis testing, let's take a look. What is hypothesis testing? Okay, hypothesis testing is an act in statistics whereby an analyst tests an assumption regarding the population parameter. Okey, kalau awak masih ingat lagi, chapter sebelum ni yang kita dah buat adalah chapter estimation, which the purpose is we want to estimate the population parameter. For example, the value of we want to estimate the mean value, standard deviation, proportion or variance, right? Okay, so for hypothesis testing, we want to test on the value that we have estimated previously, whether the value can be accepted to represent the population parameter. So that is the purpose in conducting hypothesis testing. We want to test for the estimation value that we have done previously. Okay. So the methodology employed by the analysis depends on the nature of the data used and the reason for the analysis. Okay, hypothesis testing is used to infer the result of a hypothesis performed on sample data from a larger population. So apa yang kita apply ni sama macam estimation method. Kita estimate from the sample that we take from the population. Okay, kita apply juga sama di dalam hypothesis testing chapter ni. Okay, for example, a report released some years ago stated that a typical family spend an average of RM20 per day on food. Suppose a research study on a sample of 50 families found that they are spend a mean of RM25 per day on food with a standard deviation of RM5.50. Okay, so the value of 25 ringgit here is value that we estimate from the sample of 50 family, right? Okay, and the standard deviation of 5 ringgit and 50 cent. This value we get from the sample of 50 family. Okay, so now we are interested to know whether the true population mean is now greater than 20. Why? Because ayat yang pertama tadi dia kata, statement dia mengatakan a family spend an average RM20 per day. But when we take a sample of 50 family and we calculate the average, we get the value is RM25, which is greater than 20. So now we want to know whether the statement of the true population mean is greater than 20 or not. So that we call this as hypothesis about value of mean. Okay, so to determine whether the hypothesis can be accepted or not, we need to conduct hypothesis testing. Okay, so let's take a look into the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Okay, so the first step in conducting hypothesis testing, we should state what is the null hypothesis and what is the alternative hypothesis. Okay, null hypothesis is a statement about the value of a population parameter. It is denoted by H0. Okay, null hypothesis H0. Okay, second one, alternative hypothesis. This is a statement that is accepted if the sample data provide evidence that the null hypothesis is false. So if we say that the null hypothesis is wrong, then we should accept the alternative hypothesis that we have stated. Okay, alternative hypothesis is denoted by H1. So remember, our first step in conducting hypothesis testing is identify what is the H0 and what is the H1. Okay, for example, A housewife reminisces that RM50 was the average amount she spends on groceries per week. Now she suspects that her average spending is not RM50 anymore. So our hash note here, we write as hash note mu equals to 50 and our H1 mu not equal 50. So remember, to decide or to state the null hypothesis or hash note, the symbol that we should use is equal. Okay, so the parameter that can be used, it can be mu, it can be proportion, or it also can be variance. Okay, for this case, we want to test or we want to find out whether the average spending is not more 50 or not. So we want to testing on the parameter mu. So that's why we write hash note as mu equals to 50, H1 mu not equal 50 sebab ayat dia kata is not RM50. So the suitable notation that we use here is not equal. Okay, number 2. It has been claimed that more than 80% of the graduate from FSKM obtain jobs within 1 year of graduation. So this example show that we want to test on the proportion P. Okay, so H naught here is P equals to 0.8, H1 P greater than 0.8. Why we use symbol greater? Because the words here state more than 80. So remember, our hash note always, the sign is always equal. Okay, and then our H1 can be greater, less than, or not equal. Okay, number 3. So this one is greater. An engineer wants to determine whether there is less variability in the production of spring manufactured by company 1 than in the production of spring manufactured by company 2. Okay, so kalau ayat variability tu, kita nak test variance lah. Okay, so this one is variance. So H1 kita should be variance of company 1 equals to variance company 2, and our alternative, variance of company 1 less than variance company 2. Sebab tadi ayat dia apa? Less, right? So this one kat sini kita guna less. Okay, so conclusion is hash note dia, symbol dia always equal. Okay, H1 it can be less than ataupun greater than ataupun not equal. Okay, but but sometimes H0 H1 also can be stated as dia punya symbol mu can be greater than or equal certain value. Okay, H1 it can be mu less than certain value. Okay, ataupun mu less than equal, dan kat sini dia akan jadi dia punya sebaliknya lah. Kalau sini less than equal, sini kan akan jadi greater than. Okay, but you should bear in your mind, hash note should be equal, so tak boleh berada pada alternative hypothesis. Okay. Okay, seterusnya, what is test statistic? Okay, so test statistic that we gonna use throughout this chapter, it can be Z, it can be T, it can be F, and it also can be chi-square. Okay, so semua ni test statistik ni kita dah jumpa dah dekat estimation punya topik, but kita kena identify dulu which cases kita nak guna Z, T, chi-square or F. Okay, so case dia sama. Kita akan refer case yang sama macam during our estimation method sebelum ni. Sigma known, unknown, n less than 30, n greater than 30. So semua tu kita akan guna kembali dalam chapter ni, ya. Okay, so test statistic is defined as the value calculated from sample information used to determine whether to reject the null hypothesis or not. Okay. So, dekat sini pentinglah untuk you gunakan test statistik yang betul. Okay, supaya kita boleh buat keputusan yang betul lah. Okay, next we look into rejection region and acceptor region. Okay, so how to make a decision whether we want to reject or we want to fail to reject the null hypothesis. So it based on kita kena tengok dulu, kita kena decide whether our test statistics tu falls in the rejection region or not. Okay, so how to decide the rejection region? Kita akan tengok example seterusnya, ya. Okay, rejection region and acceptor region. It is the part of sample space or critical region where the null hypothesis is rejected, which is determined by the level of significant alpha and either one tail or two tail test. If test statistic values falls in the rejection region, then we reject null hypothesis. Okay, kat sini ada ayat one tail, two tail. Okay, one tail tu is referring to, okay, kalau awak punya, okay, tadi kan kita ada H0, kita ada H1 kan. Okay, so kalau simbol dekat H1, kita tengok dekat H1, ya. Kalau simbol awak contoh mu less than 10 katakan, ataupun mu greater than 10, so kita kata dia adalah one tail. Okay, apa tengok je dulu apa maksud one tail tu. But untuk two tail tu pula, kalau kita guna notation mu not equal 10. Okay, so yang ni adalah one tail, this one is two tail. Okay, look at the example. Okay, example yang pertama ni, ya. Okay, H0 kita state mu equals to 12. H1 kita mu less than 12. So, kalau less than ni, kita kata dia left tail lah. Okay, so this one, ini adalah, kalau awak perasan, this figure is referring to what? Bell shape, betul tak? Okay, bell shape ni biasanya kalau kita guna test statistik untuk Z ataupun T. Okay, dia punya shape itu macam normal lah. Okay, so macam mana kita nak decide kita punya rejection region and acceptor region adalah dia bergantung kepada value alpha kita nantilah. Alpha tu biasanya 5%, 1%, 2%. Okay, dia akan state dekat dalam soalan. Okay, so based on this bell shape, okay, kalau left tail, kita akan tengok di sebelah kiri lah, this one. Sorry, di sebelah kiri, ya. Okay, this one. Okay, so this we call it as rejection region. So biasanya kita punya critical value tu nanti adalah value dia negatif. Okay, that's why kita akan tengok belah kiri. Okay, berbanding contoh yang kedua ni. Okay, kita state mu equals to 797,479. H1 kita mu greater than 797,479. So, kita kata dia adalah right tail. So, kita punya rejection region kita adalah berada di sebelah kanan. Sebab sign kita tadi greater. Okay, macam mana kita nak decide whether we want to reject or accept the H0? Kita akan tengok, kita akan compare value test statistik kita dengan critical value. Okay, mungkin sekarang ni awak tak nampak, later on kita akan tengok lah. Okay, next, itu kalau right tail. What if kalau two tail pula? Two tail tadi saya kata kalau sign kita not equal kan. Kalau two tail, dia punya rejection region dia ada dua, di sebelah kiri dan kanan. So, kita akan decide untuk reject hash not kalau kita punya test statistik yang kita kira tu jatuh di dalam rejection region. Okay. So, this is how we want to decide whether to reject or not our null hypothesis.